Welcome, I am Kathy Luce, Director of Grants Management here at the Maine Health Access Foundation. This video is intended to help you complete your financial report for your MeHAF grant. MeHAF requires its grantees to use its reporting form when submitting their financial report. The financial reporting forms for each of the grant initiatives are available on the Reports and Forms page of the MeHAF website. Download and save the XLS file on your computer. You can watch the video downloading the MeHAF financial reporting form to learn how to download the financial form to complete and include with your grant report. All reporting requirements are submitted through the grantee portal. There can only be one login per grant. If multiple people need to access a grant or the reporting requirements in the portal, I recommend you share login credentials. The narrative portion of the report is a web-based form where you can type your responses to the questions in the text boxes provided. The financial report is uploaded and attached to the reporting form. You can also upload and attach a narrative if requested to do so by your program officer. If there are any changes in your project budget, those changes need to be approved in advance by the Foundation. MeHAF's reallocation policy allows grantees to reallocate up to 10% of their total MeHAF funds without permission from the Foundation, but the grantee will need to provide an explanation of those changes in their report. Reallocation of more than 10% requires written permission from the program officer. To request a budget modification, please contact your program officer. So let's start working on your financial report. The first thing I would ask you to do is complete the section in the top right-hand corner of the page. Enter the organization, project title, the grant period, and the report period. If you are submitting an interim or progress report, the report should cover the first 6 months of the project period or year. If you are submitting an annual or final report, the report should cover the entire project period or the entire year in the case of a multi-year grant. The budget columns on the financial report should reflect what was submitted with your grant application. Include your approved project budget under the budget columns, and then enter what you have actually received and expended under the actual columns. Even if you are submitting a 6-month progress report, include the entire project budget amounts so that we can compare the actual income and the expenses to the approved budget. List all sources of income for your project, both budgeted and actual. We expect that your actual numbers will most likely be slightly different than the projected budgeted amounts you submitted with your grant application. Next, list the direct expenses for your project. Direct expenses are costs that can be specifically identified with the project or program and are allowable under the grant. Please refer to your approved project budget. Include indirect costs. Indirect costs are the expenses incurred by an organization in the execution of its activities and not identified with a particular activity. We do not require grantees to itemize indirect expenses, and we allow an indirect cost rate of 15%. That means 15% of direct program expenses, not 15% of the total grant amount. Once you have added up all of your direct program expenses, multiply that amount by 15% to calculate the allowable indirect expense amount. There are some organizations that have an established indirect rate of less than 15%. Therefore, they should use whatever their indirect rate is for calculating indirect. In addition, there are some grantees who want to use all of their MeHAF funds for the project, and they provide the indirect as an in-kind donation towards their match requirement. That is okay to do, and if that is the case for you, then you should not include any actual indirect expenses under the MeHAF columns. At MeHAF, we encourage our grantees to include indirect expenses as part of their project budget. Include your total project budget. Check your totals and check your addition. The financial reporting template is an Excel spreadsheet, so feel free to use the full functionality of the spreadsheet to calculate subtotals and totals. Here is a sample financial report. This is a good example because the grantee has included the project's other funding sources as well as in-kind support. Sometimes grantees forget to fill in these other columns. The expenses appear to be appropriate and in line with the project budget, and income equals expenses showing that the grantee expended all of the grant funds. This is a final financial report. If you are working on a progress report, then income and expenses will not be equal since you wouldn't have expended all of your grant funds at this point in the project period. These are the types of things your program officer is going to be looking for when reviewing the financial report. I also want to point out that the entire annual grant amount is included under the actual MeHAF income columns. A common mistake grantees make when completing a progress report is to only include half of the MeHAF grant. Since MeHAF normally disperses the whole annual grant amount at the beginning of the project period, you should include the entire amount received. Here are some helpful hints. Periodically check if your actual expenditures are in line with your approved project budget. Look at what you have spent and what you still need to spend during your grant period. Are you on track to spend all of your MeHAF funds? Work with your finance person to use accurate budget figures. Don't just plug in numbers for the sake of completing your report. Review the completed report before submitting. Check your addition and totals. Have your financial person review the report as well. Communicate with your program officer. Have things changed from when the proposal was submitted? Do you need to request a reallocation or some other modification? If you have any questions or need assistance with completing your financial report, please contact your program officer or myself, Kathy Luce, Director of Grants Management.